Welcome back, everybody, to Hoops HD's continuing 2023-2024 preseason coverage. If you are here for a
Woohoo!
power conference like the ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, Pac-12, SEC, or any of the regular multi-bid conferences, including the Mountain West, the American, the Big East, the A10, you're in
Not
the wrong
tonight,
place.
buddy.
Go up there to the season
Yeah.
preview tab. You can check them out there. This is our under the radar preview. We have 22 conferences plus one extra team beyond those 22 conferences. And we're going to be covering every single one of those teams in depth, at least an hour of coverage per
Yes.
team tonight. We're going to be here
Yes.
a long time. Now,
Yes.
I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, joined up top here by David Griggs and David Dorman. Down below me, Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.org and Jason from Friday the 13th.
Jason. Yes.
Um,
Wow.
I'm a little scared
Spooky.
here.
Yeah.
Me too. He's not moving.
I thought John Sleeka was joining us, but maybe not.
No.
Wow.
Yeah. Jason Lores, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. Jason, how you doing tonight?
All right. I guess John's been frozen out.
Yeah, we can't even hear Jason, so I don't know what's going on. Okay. Well,
Do
we'll
we?
try to get that figured out here. I don't know what's going on.
A real show would have started over, but I think we're just gonna leave Stalika frozen.
All right, we'll try to get Stalika or Jason Voorhees or somebody back. Uh, let's start though. Before we get into the conferences, though, there was some news. Griggs, let me turn it over to you about the news about the NIT.
Yes, after having not done anything totally asinine for at least 2 or 3 weeks, the NCAA comes out with this plan to restructure the NIT and who gets the bids, and this obviously impacts the under the radar conferences, which I think are near and dear to our hearts. The old format was a first place team that did not win the automatic bid because they did not win the conference tournament was at least guaranteed a bid to the NIT if they were not selected. That has changed. There will be 12 automatic bids given out now, and all will go to the Power Six, I guess. The Power Five plus the Big East. They're each going to get 2 teams each, and then the other 20 will be selected by committee with no preference given to first place teams. And to me, I don't think the NIT appeals to that many people that aren't huge college basketball fans. And if you are a huge fan, I think what appeals to you the most is what appeals to me, and I think Chad too, and probably Rocco, and that's the matchups between the first place top level teams from the under the radar conferences and the teams from the Power Five schools that didn't make the tournament. And you feel like that's kind of been kicked in the dick a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Rocco, it is going to be the top 2 teams by net from those 6 conferences. I guess next year, though, it goes down to 5 conferences, or maybe Washington State, Oregon State are guaranteed NIT bids. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem coming out of last 2 years is the NIT actually probably needed to be bigger. There's a lot of really good teams left out. I had, after the NCAA bracket came out, I had the San Francisco staff texting me like crazy. Do we have a chance at the NIT? I'm like, no, there's still like 10 really good teams above you, and they're probably not getting in. There's like a lot of quality teams in that range and into the range that we're going to talk about tonight, the other 22 conferences under the radar. And so, not only that, it's not only the fact that the bottom conference champions that were guaranteed, and there are a lot of upsets in leagues like the NEC, the OVC, the Southland, where they depend on that guaranteed money and can send 2 teams to the postseason, one to the NCAA, one to the NIT, but also the at-large spots are starting to will also start to evaporate for teams from like the American and the West Coast Conference, and so I think it's tragic across the board unless you are a Power Six. And then in terms of next year, I'm sure they can either make it 12 wildcard selections, but it has to be Power Five teams because those leagues will be 18 teams deep in some cases. But I'm assuming they're not just going to take bids away once they've already made this shift.
And I guess one of my questions is why not expand it to either 48 or all the way out to 64?
Yeah, why not?
They did.
It's not a
Exactly.
championship. It's not a championship. It's basically a jamboree. It's an invitational. Why not invite more teams?
And you can pull it off schedule-wise. They briefly had it at 40, if you remember, for a few
Yeah.
years before they cut it back down to 42.
And on that note, I think the WNIT has already gone to 64 on the women's side.
Yeah.
So it would make it congruent from that perspective as well.
Well,
I believe the NCAA actually does not own the WNIT like it does with the men's NIT. So
yeah, they don't. And I guess what the NCAA would say is that it's a cost effectiveness thing. It costs a lot more to travel a men's team around than it does a women's team. It doesn't, but that's the kind of thing that they would say.
Well, I don't know. When you bring a lot better weight room and a lot better equipment to the men's teams than the women's team, maybe it is more expensive. But
too soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Jason's here. Jason Lawrence.
All right. I think we finally have John Salika with us, and not Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, I had an unwelcome trick or treater stopping by.
Okay.
God.
Are they alive?
I'm afraid to. Okay, maybe we should get started.
Hopefully you're okay, Salika. But let's go ahead and get right into these conferences and talk about these teams. And as we go through these conferences, we're going to focus on who's going to win the conference, who's going to be the big stories, the big teams of the conference. Also, when we discuss these conferences, I'd like each of you to address as we go through them. If you discuss the conference, whether or not you think there is a shot for an at-large bid in this conference. Maybe not, two teams that are within the at-large bid field, but maybe there's the first place team, should they get upset in their conference tournament, could still get in through an at-large bid. So kind of keep that in mind, everybody, as we do through this. But let's start things off in the America East. And Stalika, if you are back from being attacked by Jason Voorhees, let me throw things over to you. What do you like in the America East this season?
Well, I think this conversation is going to have to begin with Vermont right here. This is a team that's been a perennial contender and it's going to be the preseason favorite again. This is a team that's certainly scheduling like a team that's going to wants to play above the bubble right here. They're going to be part of the Myrtle Beach Invitational that's going to include Charleston and either St. Louis and Wyoming on their half of the brackets. They also have home games against Yale and Colgate and also trips to Virginia Tech and Toledo. So hopefully a few opportunities where if they run up a gaudy enough record, they could end up in a similar to position to, if not Florida Atlantic, at least a Charleston from last year who got up to the 12 line.
Yeah, but Rocco, I understand the Vermont thing. I also look at a team with only one starter back as opposed to a little team from UMass Lowell that won 26 games last year and has a lot of that team back this year.
Agreed. I like UMass Lowell quite a bit on paper. I mean, I think they've got the ingredients to build off of what they did last year. I agree that Vermont, Vermont's usually a fine wine throughout the season. They typically can take some lumps early, but they get it figured out by league play. I think it's going to be a great battle when these two go up against each other, potentially up to 3 times, as we've predicted last year with Vermont and Bryant. Obviously, another big story here in the American East is Jared Grasso getting suspended and Bryant maybe not being a contender due to that, even though they do have some talent. So I do think UMass Lowell and Vermont will duke it out. And I'm actually forecasting a co-championship here between the two. And we'll see who wins the tiebreaker because that will be huge for an on-campus championship game.
So does that mean one half gets played on one arena and another half gets played on another?
Well, it'll come down the strength of record, and I don't think that. I mean, once you get past Vermont and Lowell, I don't think anybody's close to them. I think there are teams that are good enough to step up and beat them, but
I understand the Jared Grasso thing, but Brian does still have Earl Timberlake, who may be the best player in the conference. So I wouldn't completely write Bryant off, but the Grasso thing is a complete. If you haven't seen the YouTube video, you should go see it.
Is there another storyline, a potential dark horse, a potential sleeper that we all very much want to see? And of course, we're talking about not the northernmost state, but the state that people think is the more northernmost state.
Yes. Do it, Greg. Say it. Go ahead.
The Maine Black Bears. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I know that they only won 13 games last year, and that in and of itself doesn't jump off the page, but they were pretty good in the latter part of the season. They were playing their best ball. 4 starters are back. They're used to playing together. And for the first time in my life, I think, I'm seeing some life out of this program.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I think
yeah.
Maine can finish top half of the league. I would predict them to be top half of the league, and that alone is a major step.
Yeah.
I'll also point out, just over the weekend, UMBC took Fordham to the wire. In fact, UMBC led most of the game. Again, it's a close scrimmage, doesn't really matter. Actually, charity exhibition, but it was good to see guys like Bryce Johnson, who's a big transfer from Chicago State, play very well in that game. And UMBC looks like they could have some pieces. Not expected a lot. They're picked sixth in most publications, so watch out for the Retrievers. And then NJIT, definitely not expected to do a lot. Picked last by most publications, but I like the pedigree of Grant Billmeyer coming in from the University of Maryland. He was on their staff. He's going to get that thing turned around pretty quick. He's got a couple pieces to work with early. So just look for NJIT to slowly get better as the season goes on.
Yeah, but I personally am with Lowell in this conference, but we got a lot more conferences to get to here. For the Griggs, I like the idea of Maine having one of their best seasons ever, and
Right.
Cooper Flagg, number one recruit. I heard word of him signing with Duke, but I saw him in a jersey that said Maine the other day. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe he did stay home. He's from Maine, by the way.
Yeah.
Dorman, how about the A-Sun Conference up next?
Woo!
Yeah, the ASUN is going to be interesting. The team that has been the cream of the crop here is Liberty, but they have departed. We're going to Conference USA.
Along with Jacksonville State,
That
who's
would be
also
a
been very good.
that would be a huge surprise if Liberty won this league this year.
So it opens it up a little because I think Liberty's really good, but we'll get to them later. I really like Eastern Kentucky in this conference. I think they're strong. They got some guys that have been there a while. The coaching is solid, and I think this is a year for Eastern Kentucky and the A-Sun. That's my pick to win it. I don't see another bid coming out of this league unless something crazy goes on with Eastern Kentucky, a crazy undefeated run or anything. This is a one bid conference, but this year I like Eastern Kentucky.
I'm kind of with you, Dorman, on the East Kentucky pick here, but Rocco, I also think there are maybe half a dozen different teams that could win this league this year because I don't think there's a very big gap from them to North Alabama, Lipscomb, Bellarmine, maybe even Kennesaw, but they lost a lot off last year's NCAA team. Stetson with Jalen Blackman, who played for the year potential, but what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I do think there is a tier between Eastern Kentucky and whoever's next on your pecking order, or because I think it's muddy after that. But I do think there's a lot of great competitive programs. One of the beautiful things about the A-Sun the last couple of years is there's been a much larger commitment to basketball. I was able to cover the quarterfinals last year between Kennesaw State and Queens, which was an amazing game. Of course, Kennesaw won by 1 point. And Terrell Burden, who hit the game-winning free throw, is back. So is the big man Josh Robinson. And Coach Petford, who comes over from Alabama's staff, he's been groomed to be a head coach for years. He's a former great player. I think it's a really good fit for. I just don't know what he can do in year one, but they've got some of those vets back, so they're intriguing. A lot of people like Gulf Coast roster, and I got a chance to talk with them a lot during the offseason, and they of course last year started very strong. They beat USC on opening night. Everybody remembers that. They had one of the best non-conference performances anywhere in under the radar play, but then just fell off a map. Once they hit some injuries, they had no depth, and they really fell apart. They only got like 9th or 10th last year. They think they've addressed that by adding much better depth this season. So we'll see what Gulf Coast can do. I was a little concerned, though, when they lost a scrimmage the other day to Bethune-Cookman. But scrimmages are scrimmages, right? So so they're definitely a team to watch. I like Lipscomb's coaching and their veteran roster. So those are the main ones I'm looking on. I think I'm a little lower on Stetson personally, even though they got third last year. And I do think Queens will continue to move up the ladder. They have a great program going on there.
I actually like this Queens roster this year as well, but ineligible for the postseason. They are eligible for the A-Sun tournament. It could make things weird if they do win it. What are we up to here? Griggs, you want to take the next conference, being the Big Sky?
The Big Sky. Anyway, sure, why not? So one of the conferences that is yet to have media day, they're opting to do it on Halloween. But as far as who's good here, I really like two teams more than the other. I'm kind of going back and forth with both of them, and one is
Really?
Weber State, the other Eastern Washington. They both return a fair amount of talent. Eastern Washington 7-2, 16-2 last year, was the first place team, did not win the conference tournament. I know that they lost some key pieces, but I think with the experience they have coming back and the guys that they have that can step up, and they've added some good pieces too. They're really good. And then Weber, I realize I'm not out on a limb here much. Those are two of the teams that are kind of predominantly the front runners or the flag carriers here. Weber, again, kind of an unspectacular year last year, but they were better down the stretch, and everybody's back. They have quite a bit of experience. It's hard to not like a team that returns all their starters.
Yeah, so Salika, what do you think? I love this Weber pick here with everybody back. I'm not that high on Eastern Washington. They only have two starters back, and they include and their top three scorers from last year are all gone. But so I don't think I agree with you, Griggs, on Eastern Washington
Well, I
even
would
being in
also
the same ballpark as Weber. But go ahead, Salika, your
I would
thoughts.
also remind you, Eastern Washington got off to a very fast start in the Big Sky last year, and then just completely fell off the table and actually lost their opener in the conference tournament. So, if we're talking from
Yeah.
a momentum standpoint, yes, I'd probably say Weber State would be the team to beat.
Yeah, Montana State winning that conference tournament, and literally everybody, including the head coach, is gone from that team. So
Yes.
we're gonna have a big
I
step back, unfortunately, for Montana
wrong
State
with
this year.
Montana.
I was going to say Montana's solid. Montana could have a
No, I
good
said
year.
Montana State was who I
No,
was
the state
mentioning.
of Montana. Why would everybody just
Oh.
jump ship like that?
Yeah, Dorman, your thoughts on Montana? You want to throw them in here too?
Won 17 games last year. Behind Weber State, I'm kind of guessing on Montana's takes hold of the second slot. I think they're stronger and better than most of the rest of the conference.
Yeah, and Rocco, just this Weaver State team, I just think there's a big gap between them and the second place team, though.
I think they're the pick for sure. Dylan Jones is an NBA talent. He was
Mhm.
phenomenal in the NBA Combine. Got great reviews. He could have been borderline first round pick. You don't. Well, there's two parts of that that are really surprising. One, you don't see many guys not stay in the draft when they have that kind of evaluation. And two, if he doesn't stay in the draft, it's amazing that he didn't get plucked away by a big time like a Kansas or a Michigan or somebody with a lot of NIL money. So amazing to have a guy this good back in the Big Sky this year. And I think they've done a great job developing the players around him. I texted with a couple of their coaches over the weekend. They didn't tell me what the score was, but they scrimmaged Boise really close over the weekend. That's another good sign. And I think this team's set to do some big things. They have a great schedule. They'll play St. Mary's here the first weekend, so I'm hopefully going to be able to see them here. And that's another awesome test for them.
Chad, how do you think they perform in the Beehive this year?
I was going to say the most important thing is that they are a member of one of our favorite fictional conferences, the Beehive
Yeah.
Conference, and
Yeah.
I think they could win this thing.
Yeah.
They
Utah
can.
might give them a battle, but other than that,
They have the best odds. They probably have the best odds to make the tournament in the Beehive. Honestly,
Probably do.
think about
Wow.
think about it.
You're right, they do.
and take home the old Ochre bucket too. So
Yeah, which is missing. We're posting a reward for that Ulker bucket.
we believe Utah State has it, but we're working on that.
Yeah.
Stalika, over in the where are we up to here? How about the Big South Conference, and how about this UNC Asheville team led by Drew
Yes.
Pember?
This is another team that stormed through conference play last year and is going to have a lot of the talent coming back, including Pember. This is another team that's potentially scheduling trying to be above the bubble right here. Now, they're going to be part of the Northern Classic, which is going to include Lipscomb, Wofford, and Western Kentucky, which is actually going to be played up in Canada around Thanksgiving weekend. They're also going to have games at Michigan, a game against Auburn and Huntsville, and they also scheduled a home and home against Kennesaw State.
So they're going for it. I'll get to Rocco here. He's our bracketologist and all-around expert. Are they good enough to make a run at the bubble? I'm not going to pick them as being inside the bubble, but I think they're good enough to where if they did it, it wouldn't shock me. This is a damn good team, and they did it right. They scheduled the way you need to if you want to make a run at the bubble.
I would
Rocco,
say
your
if
thoughts?
they end up losing only 2 games in conference, and even if they don't get a signature win, they should at least probably be in the 12, 13 seed range.
Oh yeah, I think so. What do you think, Rocco?
Yeah, so we're talking Asheville, right?
Yeah, Asheville.
Just to confirm. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I agree. I love what they did schedule wise. They clearly want to set themselves up for NCAA tournament success, have a chance to win in the NCAA tournament. I don't know that they're good enough to go perfect in the Big South. And I think, there's a couple good programs, your Gardner Webbs, your Longwoods, Radford's getting a lot better. Winthrop's probably number two. I think between those 4 or 5 teams, they're going to take a couple losses, and whatever they can achieve in the non-conference. They do play Michigan in the opener, as Stalika said. They play Auburn in a neutral court game.
I think they'll beat Michigan. Really?
They maybe Michigan just handled Marquette, so that's hard to say. But I think, yeah, I think no matter what, you're going to see a really competitive team. Could be one of those teams that we're complaining about at the end of the year that they didn't get enough opportunities. But if they do win one of those 2 big ones, at least they'll be talked about for a long time, which would be great. But I think they have some other tricky ones mixed in. I think Western Kentucky and Canada will be tricky. UNC Wilmington, the first weekend is going to be a great game.
That's a great game. Oh, man,
and a road trip to UAB at the end of December.
UAB.
Yeah,
exactly.
That would actually be a quad 1 opportunity, most likely. So I'm excited about it, though. Drew Pember, another player, just like Dylan Jones, who's probably way too good for under the radar, but he's staying under the radar with us, which is great.
We can't promote individual players above the radar.
I would note if Asheville is really going for it, they need to explain why they scheduled 3 non-D1 teams as well.
Because they don't hurt you. They're nothing burgers. They don't do anything to you. It's like they don't matter.
No, they do. The committee sees it. That was a stated reason for, yeah.
Okay. Dorman, Big West Conference. What about this league?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year out west. I'll pull up my note here. Sorry about that. The Gauchos come back from a huge year, ran off 27 wins last year. But there's other talent here. Hawaii, very, very strong. UC Irvine, the Eaters, always solid. Fullerton had a nice start to the season, got to 20 wins. I think this conference is actually much better than they had. I think this conference is stronger and deeper than it has been in the last 5 to 10 years. I always love basketball out of the Big West. This year, I think it's going to be really enjoyable. Everyone should be watching these games. It's going to be great. Another team to watch out. I think Long Beach is really strong this year.
I was just about to bring them up as well, because I think it's maybe one of Dan Munson's best teams he's had in a while there at Long Beach. Also, kind of keeping half an eye on UC Davis a little bit this year. Even I think
good call, Chad. Go for it. I was just excited
to hear you
mention him. Well, yeah, I mean, I like Jim Les as a coach. 3 starters are back. They've had a lot of momentum coming up from not being good at all. I think it continues into this year. They're strong at the guard. They have presence underneath. They're balanced. They have several guys that can put it in the basket. I'm kind of excited about this Davis team. I think they're a bit of a dark horse.
Let me throw this out here, Rocco, in this conference especially. If a team like Santa Barbara, which with A.J. Mitchell, I really like this Gauchos team this year, and you've got strength in this league, is an at-large bid possible here if the first place team slips up in the conference tournament? I think this might be that Big West could toe that line. No,
I wish. I mean, I think the ceiling for the Big West would be to do what the WAC did last year, which I think the WAC finished as a top 10 league. But even so, with Sam Houston finishing 62 in that league, Utah Valley finishing 52 in that league, neither one of them were getting in. I think it's going to be similar to that. So I think it's going to look really good for the things we track, like KenPom conference rankings. And I think they are 7 deep. Like the top 7, I think, are all capable of winning the conference tournament. And then I also think Bakersfield's better. And I think Northridge made a really amazing hire in Andy Newman. Even though they won't do a lot this year, they're going to be good in the future. So I love the way this league's going. Like Dorman said, I would still put it at less than 5% chance they get 2 bids.
I'll tell you what, Rocco, though, at the end of last season, last 2-3 weeks left of the season, we were doing our brackets. Utah Valley was showing up as a team that remember as a potential at-large bid first 4 team. Obviously they fell off and the loss of the conference tournament might knock you off there. But obviously, if somebody can win this conference by 2 games, really have a really great regular season.
I would love to see it. I would love to see it.
Yeah.
I just don't have faith in the committee to do it.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
generally speaking, if you do sort of a case study, and I know you all have done these, you're looking at winning 2/3 of your out-of-conference games and having not one but multiple teams beat somebody else that is also inside the bubble. That's sort of the formula for multi-bids. Now, again, the exception to that is if you have one team that just goes absolutely crazy and gets inside the bubble and then doesn't win the conference tournament. We see that every year from an under-the-radar school, it seems like. But is it good enough to do that, to win 2/3 of their out-of-conference games and win multiple games against teams inside the bubble? I would like to think so, but probably not.
Yeah, I think out of all the teams, only Long Beach really scheduled for it as well. I mean,
Yeah.
Santa Barbara's got one chance at New Mexico, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So unless they win at the pit, I don't think they're going to stay in the mix.
Rocco, let me stick with you here for our next conference, the newly named Coastal Athletic Conference, no longer the Colonial.
It's a beautiful league.
It is.
And
It's
a
beautiful.
new conference coming in, a new team coming to this conference here in Campbell moving in. But
Welcome.
yeah, I think I know where you're going to go with this league, and I may be the only person that differs on the pick here. But who is your pick in this league?
Well, I have two picks really because I have
Okay.
a regular season champion and a conference tournament champion. So my regular season champion, I think Charleston's got enough forces to win it. And they, in a lot of ways they belong especially after everything they proved last year. I think they have enough back. Plus, Coach Kelsey continues to just pump up players from lower ranks, and you have to trust that process for all these years now. And then a team I'm extremely high on, and I think I will be picking to win the auto bid in the CAA tournament is the Drexel Dragons. And
wow,
they
really?
basically have everybody back. Zach Spiker's an underrated coach, and he's just needed the pieces. He's had over the years, good players come up as young players, then they transfer out. This year he finally kept everybody, and I think Drexel's ready to fight. And I think Wilmington's right there as well. I just think I like those two teams better.
Wait,
I do want to segue to.
What's wrong with? How about Hofstra though?
Thank
I like
you.
Hofstra
The
too.
Fighting Speedies.
I like
That-
Hofstra.
Yeah. Okay. Sleek
I
of the
like
Dormant.
all four. I like all four.
Yeah, I think there's 4 teams in this league that are really good and 10 that aren't.
Go ahead, Sleeka, you go first, then Dorman.
I want to
I
segue
think
to
5 and
Drexel
6 are
for a
good.
moment. This is actually going to be the first year they're going to be part of the Reform Big Five. So they're going to have, I guess, what they're calling a scheduling pod, where they're going to take on 2 teams against the traditional Big Five, and then their future opponent to be determined will actually be played at the Wells Fargo Center, depending on how they finish against the
If you want that bracket,
John,
go up to that in-season tournaments tab. That bracket is up there in that tab, by the way.
that's actually a huge opportunity for Drexel. I'll just comment real quick because they have Temple and LaSalle. I think they'll be picked to win both of those pretty clearly. Yeah. And if they win both of those, they'll play Villanova for the championship, and that would be huge for Drexel.
Yeah.
So you're assuming Villanova beats Penn and St. Joe's, huh?
Yeah, I mean,
they could play St. Joe's. They could play St. Joe's for the title. I like St. Joe's.
Yeah. Wilmington, has 4 starters back from a team that almost beat Charleston in the championship game. I think they won 24 games last year, and when you look at the games they lost, it was to a lot of easy teams. So it wasn't that they weren't good enough to win the good games; it's that they stubbed their toes in the bad ones. With experience, I think that gets ironed out. I like all 4 of those teams. I mean, it wouldn't. I think it's a 4-horse race, but God, I like this Wilmington team.
And I do think real quick on that note, I think Delaware and Towson are a solid 5 and 6, but I do think there's a huge drop off after 6.
I kind of like the fact that Stony Brook brings 4 starters back. I love returning starters. I know they only won 11 games last year, but they're my dark horse if somebody from the bottom is going to sneak up to make the top 5 or so. But Dorman, you had a few comments.
Gino's on the hot seat, Chad, so Gino better win with those guys.
Dorman, you had a comment.
I was kind of just jumping on, like the top 4 or 5 teams. This can be a really interesting conference season because all of those teams can beat up on each other and get some surprising wins. So, but Speedy Claxton at Hofstra has done a really, really nice job.
Yeah,
Tyler Thomas, he's a real stud, good scorer, good shooter. He comes back for his, I believe, his senior year. He's strong. He's got some other pieces that come back with some scoring. I think Hofstra is going to be tough and will be heard from in this conference.
And that is my pick to win this league right there. It is the fighting Speedy Claxton.
So we have no consensus here.
Zero consensus on this
Jeez.
card.
Right, yeah.
I think our consensus is that the bottom 7 or 8 are going to be really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 4 teams: Wilmington, Hofstra, Drexel, Charleston. But
Yeah.
Maybe Delaware. Delaware beat Temple in a scrimmage yesterday, so don't sleep on the Hens.
Are
Dorman,
they still D1? I didn't know.
Dorman, the Conference USA, a very new look conference, very quickly out of Conference USA. Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Rice, UAB, UTSA, all gone into this year. Jacksonville State, Liberty, Sam Houston, and whatever's left of New Mexico State after the implosion last year.
Yeah, this could be a little confusing with all the ins and outs and everything and what's going on. But at the top, it is strong. Liberty is really, really good.
Post Darius McGee, though. Post Darius McGee, you still like him? Okay.
Yeah, I do like him. And we'll ask Rocco here in a second. But if Liberty does what I feel they could do out of conference and goes through the conference and doesn't lose more than once or twice, I wonder if they could be mentioned for a spot if they don't win the conference tournament. Liberty is really good to me.
Absolutely, yeah. I think so. I'll be covering Liberty at the Myrtle Beach Invitational. They open up with Furman, which is a good one.
Assignment. Wow, down at Myrtle Beach.
Thanks.
We're working Rocco too hard these days.
Theoretically, they could play Charleston in the championship, which would be a pretty big game for both teams. But they're also part of the Field of 68 Invitational, where they'll play at Florida Atlantic, which is a big Q1 road game, and then a neutral game with Charleston. So they could play Charleston twice. And then they also get Grand Canyon, who is, spoiler alert, in my top 5 of my UTR poll. And they also get Alabama later in the year.
Good luck.
A really awesome But that, I mean, even if they lose to Bama by single digits or something, that's going to help their numbers. So, no doubt, if Liberty can somehow come out of all that with like 1 or 2 losses, they're right in the mix.
I'll tell you what, though, but I don't know if they're a complete runaway here either.
Right.
Middle Tennessee is a team that's going to play defense. Western Kentucky, now that Rick Stansbury is gone and no longer underperforming, Steve Lutz coming in, I kind of think they may take a step up. I like Sam Houston coming in here as well.
Yeah, I like Sam Houston's program. So I don't know what I think of this year's edition, but.
Well, they're going to also play tenacious full court pressure. The style won't change with Chris Mudge. Chris Mudge was Jason Hooten's 10-year assistant, so he's finally taking the reins over. And then Hooten's over at New Mexico State, and they've quickly retooled that roster. So even though not much is expected of New Mexico State after what happened last year with Hooten there, that's another team I think by the end of the year they're going to be tough. And then I also like what Joe Golding's got going on at UTEP. I think I like a little bit of everybody in this league except for FIU. I don't think FIU is very good.
I would have liked Western Kentucky better.
Go ahead.
There you go.
I would have liked Western Kentucky better had Davion McKnight stayed, but he has gone up the road to Xavier, so they'll be looking for a hole at point guard.
Yeah, good point. But Stalika, let me stick with you, Stalika, here, and as we jump right over to our next conference. And notice one that's near and dear to your heart, the Horizon League.
Yeah, definitely a popular conference in our area right here. Ever since they've transitioned up from Division I and moved out of the Atlantic Sun, where they're an outlier, Northern Kentucky always seems to be either a preseason favorite, a regular season champion, or the conference tournament champion. Although this year, I think their neighbors up north in Wright State have some potential pieces to upstage the Norse right here. Trey Calvin is going to be the preseason player of the year for the Raiders, and also Tanner Holden coming back, who was one of their key pieces from a couple years ago.
A rare waiver approved situation with Tanner Holden, by the way. He is eligible. Go ahead.
Yeah, because he found out that the grass wasn't necessarily greener at Ohio State and may have a better chance making the tournament with Wright State.
Yeah, maybe so.
Beyond that, you mentioned Northern Kentucky. Griggs, I mean, you got a little bit there. Teams like Milwaukee, Cleveland State, who was good last year. Unfortunately, Youngstown State, who we thought that magical season last year. Everybody's gone from that team, though.
Yeah, I miss Penguin Fever already. Um, but I kind of like NKU. Wright State, I agree with what Stalika said. I kind of like Milwaukee in this league too, but if I'm picking a winner, it's Northern Kentucky. I just think that they were pretty good and they've got the most back. Um, BJ Freeman is a phenomenal player at Milwaukee. If they can get some stuff out of his supporting cast, I think that they're going to have a big year too. Um, the one thing that that I thought this might be the most improved team in the conference, IUPUI picked 10th out of 11th. Progress.
Progress there, huh? Progress. Rocco, any thoughts? Any thoughts on this team and this conference? I think it could be a pretty interesting 3 or 4 team race here.
Yeah, I actually think it's five, and it's hard to
Okay.
separate the five. I still like Youngstown quite a bit. I know there's
Oh
going to be some new.
yes, thank you, God.
I know there's going to be some new faces, but the system they run is just plug and play, and they've got some. They got a big transfer from Northern Kentucky, took one of their best players. So I think that's fascinating. My biggest questions are: is Youngstown State going to play any defense? That's always the question there. And I like the way Milwaukee and Northern Kentucky play defense the best. Milwaukee with Bart Lundy might be the best coach, so they might be the pick to win the tournament. But I think Cleveland State's the one that most people sleep on too much. I
Yeah.
think all five of those, and throwing Wright State in there too, it's going to be really tough. They're going to battle each other all year, I think. And then my sleeper a team that nobody's talking about because they lost everybody's Purdue Fort Wayne. I'm not picking them to be part of that five, but there's a guy I want everybody to pay attention to named Rashid Bello. He's not on anybody's top two all conference teams, but this guy was dynamite at an NAIA level. And I just have a feeling he's going to take the Horizon League by storm on an individual level. So just remember the name.
All right. What are we up to here? Griggs, let me go to you next on the Ivy League, which has
Okay.
a fascinating team here.
Are we not doing Chicago State?
We are at the end of the show.
Oh, at the end of the show. Okay, yeah. Okay, the Ivy League. Well, there's one team in this league that I really like, and by like I mean think that they're up there with at-large caliber good, and that's Yale. I think everybody remembers what Princeton did in the NCAA tournament, going to the Sweet 16.
Especially
yeah,
our good friend John Titel.
yeah, John Titel. Remember, John? Are you watching? Do you remember that? Like, Princeton went out to Arizona, who happens to be Penn's rival within the conference. Went out to Arizona and beat them in the NCAA tournament.
For those that don't know, Titel has degrees from both Arizona and from Penn, and his
Yes.
arch rival at Penn beats his other school. So
Yeah,
it was a bad day for him.
Right. I mean, Princeton had a really good year against Titel's, schools Titel graduated from. So, I mean, Penn. But anyway, Yale tied with them in the standings and was right there with them. I was kind of expecting Yale to win the conference tournament last year, and I want to say they got all 4 or 5 starters back, or 4 of them. But this is a team that I think could be really, really dangerous, and possibly get close to and maybe even inside the bubble. They're fun to watch play. They're used to playing together. They just they check a lot of boxes.
I think one of the wild cards for the Ivy League this year is going to be that Brown is going to end up hosting the Ivy League tournament come March. Because in fact, I think for the next 4 years, you're going to have Brown, Cornell, Dartmouth, and Columbia getting into the rotation for the first time.
Yeah,
and I kind of like this Brown team with 4 starters back, including Keno Lilly. I think they can make that top 4 and be dangerous at home in that.
right.
In the
A
Ivy
quick observation about the Ivy in general: in the day of the portal and in the day of NIL money, the Ivy is still the Ivy, and they still seem to retain their players from year to year. And we see a lot of schools in this conference with a lot of players back from a year ago, particularly. Yeah, and Yale just has good all around players. They got guys that can play, they can shoot, they can pass. It's just a good team. Anyway,
Yeah, Dorman, your thoughts on the league?
To Griggs's point, I agree. Kids stay around, and that's why they're dangerous come March. And even if they don't win the games, they're always in it. They are always in to give these big, the top power schools a game, even if they don't win, because they've been together, they play together, they've been through the ups and downs. And like Greg said, they're not there for a year or two; they're there for 4 years. I'm on the Yale bandwagon this year. Matt Nolan from Yale, I would be stunned if he wasn't the player of the year in the conference. He is a stud, and they got guys all around him. So I think it's Yale's turn, and I very well expect them to be a player come March in the tournament.
Well, one quick note here: it is actually Columbia that's hosting the Ivy League tournament this year, not Brown. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, I just confirmed that they did shuffle around the original release of schedules when they had to cancel tournaments due to COVID. So it is Columbia's turn this year.
Well, hey,
Columbia is actually interesting.
that's a true neutral site.
You know what, though, Rocco? Columbia's got all 5 starters back. They started 3 freshmen all season last year. These kids got tons of experience. This team could make the top 4 also.
If the top 4 wasn't so strong, I would maybe sixth is their ceiling. But I think this is finally the year for Brown to at least crack the top 4. And another team that's just growing on me the more and more I look at them and read about them. And I talked to them a little bit during the offseason is Cornell. They have a lot of pieces back and very old and experienced. I think that's a dangerous team. I think if anybody can knock Yale off, it might be Cornell.
Oh. How much fun is it to watch Cornell? Because it's such a unique style to this league. I mean, they play really fast plays. They love the offense. And this is typically a very half-court, methodical ball movement, backdoor cutting, kicking it out to the open shooter type of league. And then you got Cornell running all over the floor. It's just great basketball. I love this league.
That's an excellent point.
Right.
I mean, because they do bring a different dimension. At least when they face Yale, it's a little bit more balanced because Yale's not exactly a slowdown team.
Right.
And
these were my safety schools, by the way.
Let me jump over to Sleeka next for the Metro Atlantic. What do you like in the Metro Atlantic this year? Now that Iona, who was the team last year, their head coach is off to St. John's.
I like the fact that there's a lot of parity in the Metro Atlantic. It seemed like about 6 or 7 different teams were taking turns last year. And if you want to talk about a merry-go-round, look at the career of Tobin Anderson. In 2022, he was coach at St. Thomas Aquinas down in Division II. Last year, moves up to Fairleigh Dickinson and ends up taking the Knights to the NCAA tournament, beats a little team called Purdue in the round of 64. And now he's going to be filling in for Rick Pitino at Iona, where they seem to have the most consistent program in the Metro Atlantic year in and year out. But I would also look at Rider as a team that actually got picked by the coaches and the media in the Metro Atlantic to potentially supplant the Gales here.
Yeah, Dorman, I look at the Metro Atlantic. I think Rider, on paper, especially with Mervyn Jamesley in the way there, is head and shoulders above everybody else in this league.
Really, head and shoulders. Wow.
I think they've got the best roster, and maybe they win the conference by 2 or 3 games.
You could be right. I'll throw Siena in there. I really like Siena. Michael Ellie is a really strong player, tough to play against. He's a matchup nightmare. The MAC always is close and competitive usually, now minus the Rick Pitino years, but I don't see them pulling away. And I think there's some really nice rosters in this league. Going to be a tight squeeze.
Yeah, but Rocco, we need a team from New Jersey to get to the tournament as a 15 or 16 seed and win a couple of games. It's happened 2 years in a row. Come on.
They're probably the best candidate if you look at the landscape.
Candidate get in as a 15 or a 16.
Yeah. Well, hey, if it keeps happening, we got to start predicting it. So that's just how it works. But I think Tobin Anderson comes in as, arguably already the best coach in the league, or at least most proven, even though it's such a small sample size. He's super well regarded in the area. And I know he's thrilled to be at Iona. He brought a lot of the guys with him over from FDU and a couple other schools as well. I do think Iona is going to win the regular season. I penciled in Rider as my MAC tournament pick, but I think that could go a lot of ways. And I'm also keeping a really close eye on Canisius. They've looked really, I'm hearing like a lot of whispers about them. They came out and dominated Colgate in a scrimmage over the weekend. So I'm just kind of curious what's going on at Canisius. I might have to go up there and see them play.
Bring a few jackets. Dorman, Mid-American Conference, and this is, I think, it'll be a real fun league this year.
Yeah, there's some really, really good teams, and some great coaching. This is another one of my favorite conferences to watch all year long. The Zips, Akron, real strong, really talented. Kent State's going to be right there with them. Two teams that had a great year last year. Ball State, some people say, are on the move and could put something together. Personally, I'm on Akron this year. I like the roster. I like they've been there together, like we discussed in other teams and conferences. They've been through this together, well coached. But this conference could be absolute craziness this year because there's a lot of really strong teams, and I don't see anyone really pulling away that much better than the rest.
Yeah, Griggs, I don't think you mentioned a few other teams I think are good contend. Anyone else you liking in this league?
He mentioned quite a few. Toledo is a team that I normally like, but I just think that they're sort of in reset mode.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I was kind of thinking, what about Ohio University? What
Oh,
about maybe even
he did-
Northern Illinois?
he didn't name Ohio. No, I like Ohio a lot. I didn't realize he hadn't named Ohio. I guess, yeah. I mean, I don't like them as much as Kent, or I'm sorry, as much as Akron. Oh my God, I just confused Kent and Akron. I just broke a wagon wheel, like. But yeah, I mean, this was a team that was really good down the stretch. They have some good experience coming back. They're certainly going in the right direction. I love their coach. I just think that this is I really like Ohio a lot this year.
And I got to give Sleeka 2 seconds on a team that has 4 starters back and I think a pretty nice cast there. It's Travis Seal's team there in Miami.
Well, this is a team that also has 3 non D1 games on their schedule, so my 2 seconds are up.
But Rocco, I think there may be some life in this Miami team, or even in Northern Illinois, a couple teams that have not been up there in recent years.
Yeah, Northern Illinois would be my dark horse pick. It's a large climb up to the top for them after floating around in the 300s the last couple of years. But I like some of the pieces they put in place, and now they got some continuity going there in DeKalb. But I agree with Griggs. I think Ohio is my pick. Akron's got the most talent. I don't think there's any
I
arguing
like
that.
God, their
But
talent.
man, they left a sour taste in my mouth when I saw them at Toledo just get completely destroyed last year. And maybe I just saw them on the wrong night, but it's a lot of the same. It's a lot. I know they had a good season, but I just, the body language and some of the things I saw there, just, it's hard for me to see them turn it around and win the championship. I love Jeff Bowles in March. That guy's just proven for 2 decades now. And Ohio was retooling last year, and I'll admit they were very competitive for the type of talent they had. Now they've actually got the players back to get back to the dance.
Rocco, let me stick with you for a second here on the next conference. Probably playing for a trip to the first 4 in Dayton over in the MEAC. What do you like here? Only 8 teams in this league, and maybe is it the defending champions from Howard, or is it somebody else?
I think Howard's the most talented. A couple of guys are on the first team all conference. Between Shai Odom and Jelani Williams, they obviously had that great experience last year. So I don't mind them being the pick. I think they deserve that. But I know Coach Jones at Norfolk State has Jamari Thomas back, and those guys are competitive as heck. And so I think they're going to be hungry to take that title back from Howard. So my regular season pick is Howard, but my auto bid is going to Norfolk.
Yeah, that's Jamari Thomas. Thomas actually coming over from UNC Wilmington this
That's
year,
right.
over into Norfolk State. So I think I'm on Howard here also in this league.
I am too. Yeah.
Watch out for UNC Central. Lavelle Moten can coach. He's got a couple kids back. I like this program.
Okay.
I would be curious to see what Howard does at home against UC, because I think they're both Michael
Cincinnati?
Jordan. Yep. The Cincinnati Bearcats are visiting the Burr.
I did not know that. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Home series, yeah.
Yeah, let me see if I quickly get you the date for that game.
We will be dispatching Titel for that one.
Yes. That game will be coming up on November 28th. We could dispatch Titel. Their next game after that is at Penn, so he may like that.
I believe they're both Michael Jordan / Jumpman branded schools. So there probably is that connection as to why they were able to get UC to come to their gym.
Good call.
Dorman, let me jump over to you now for a conference I know you wanted to discuss tonight. Missouri Valley Conference time.
Woo-hoo.
Oh, I love the Valley. Valley is probably my favorite under the radar, but great year coming. Last year, the Valley had 5 20+ win teams, including tournament champion Drake. Drake brings back Player of the Year Tucker DeVries, who's also the coach's son. And this kid is fantastic, but he's a team player and he works the ball and he passes the ball. He can score, he can shoot, but he's all in on the team play. I really like this Drake team. They got everything they need. Regular season champ Bradley comes back. They're strong. 3 of their top 4 return, including defensive player of the year, Marlevy Leons. He's real strong because the Valley plays defense. This is not a run and gun, shoot the ball up 100 times. This is defense is played in the Valley. A lot of times it's low scoring games, grind it out. So look for Bradley to be in the mix there as well. Belmont, Murray State, and UIC, all second year to the Valley. Maybe they can do a little better this year. I think it took a while getting adjusted. I think it's tough to get adjusted to a new conference. So this is their second year round. I think they'll have some better success. And the other 3, Illinois State, Evansville, and Valpo, all working with really young, up-and-coming coaches that are starting to put together programs and players. I think they're on the up, those 3 teams. I would be surprised if anyone contends here with Drake. And I really believe Drake will get an auto bid if needed. I think they got a really strong team.
Okay, well,
I'm sorry, what did I say?
You said auto bid.
Well, you didn't address Northern Iowa at all. Well, what are your thoughts on Ben Jacobs?
Good.
Because I like this year.
Ben Jacobs, you're absolutely right, Chad. Ben Jacobson's squad is coming back. They got a stud, Bowen Bourne. He can flat out play. He's really, really strong. You're absolutely right, Chad. Northern Iowa is back in the Valley and will be a factor in this conference.
Yeah, I like Northern Iowa a lot. I'll say this for Drake. It's 2022 all over again. I said this last year and was proven wrong, but I think Drake is a top 40-ish caliber team that could actually, by default, mainly play their way into the top 25 just because of the win total that they blowed out their record and get inside the bubble 9-10 seedish range. I think Drake is really, really good.
Yeah,
and I like Northern Iowa too.
Rocco, what do you think about that with this Drake team, especially not only the returning players like Tucker, but I love the transfers that are coming here. They brought in 3 transfers that were double-digit scorers at their teams last year, and Gibson from Arlington and Aiton Wright from Cal State Northridge and Ethan Roberts from Army. I think there is depth here too.
Yeah, they have good depth, and I think DeVries, Daddy DeVries, is a heck of a coach, and so I trust them a lot in Arch Madness. But those 3 players don't inspire me very much.
Rocco froze.
Those are 3 pretty bad programs they came from. Northridge was. Oh, can you hear me? Okay.
We got you back.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Northridge was at the bottom of the Big West. Yeah, Northridge, Army, and UT Arlington. It's a whole different ball game than playing for Drake. So those guys.
But I like taking the best player off of a bad team. I think he can succeed there.
Yeah, as an individual player, they put up those numbers on bad teams against teams that were a lot better than they were. So, I mean, you got to look at.
No, and it's going to work because I trust DeVries. I'm not arguing any of that. I'm just saying it's going to take some acclimation. I thought last year's Drake team was better, and it was proven when you look at the Miami game. Miami ends up in the Final Four. Drake was tied with them with just a couple minutes to go. All right, so it's going to be really hard to be better than that, in my opinion. And I just think there's a little bit more unproven commodities when you lose guys like Garrett Sturtz, Roman Penn, and DJ Wilkins, who were the faces of the program besides DeVries for years. That's just not going to be easy to replace. And I think it opens the door a little bit more for a team like Northern Iowa or a team like Indiana State or a very old team like Missouri State to really fight them all year long. It's going to be a heck of a year in the Valley, I think.
Murray State's another one that could be in that battle, but I actually like UNI to win this league. So
really,
despite all my selling of Drake, I'm actually out of the Northern Iowa bandwagon. Go ahead, Dorn.
Yeah, I like Northern Iowa, but I like them a lot. Not quite that much though. But
the one knock I had on Coach DeVries this year is he knew this team was coming. He probably knew this team was coming back and it was going to be really strong. He didn't put together any really great out-of-conference games that pop. He's going to play UAB, probably the best out-of-conference game. I would have liked to see him put a stronger schedule together. They don't have much room for error in out-of-conference. They really can't afford to slip up much before the Valley starts.
See, I disagree with that. I think he knew they weren't as good as last year, and he wanted to get some wins.
Really?
Yeah, but they also got Nevada and Vegas, so that's not a bad game, and they should be picked to win their tournament they're in. But yeah, I think when a coach does that, he knows he needs some wins to get these guys playing well together, instead of just going out and playing the gauntlet right out of the gates. But I could be wrong. I didn't work with Drake directly, so I've just taken it's just
understood.
Yeah.
Let's keep your things rolling here. And Sleek, let me go to you for one of our favorite leagues, although
Yes.
it is changing and continues to change here. We're talking about the Northeast Conference. St. Francis Brooklyn, no longer in the league, no longer plays basketball. They shut the
No
program
longer
down.
plays anything.
Lemoyne coming in here, joining the Northeast this year, but we're about to lose two more teams as Sacred Heart and Merrimack are in their final season now in the Northeast, going off the Metro Atlantic. Merrimack is eligible for the postseason, though, for this year, I believe, that they have completed their transition.
They have.
Well, good.
Last year, they won the conference regular season and conference tournament. Despite that, Fairleigh Dickinson gets the bid, and we all know what they did. Go ahead, Salika, though.
But I was going to say, everyone that's in the loop in the Northeast seems to be high on Sacred Heart this year. They do have a couple guys in Nico Gillette and Joey Riley who are on the preseason conference team right here. Sacred Heart was in the top half of the NEC, but it turned out to be Merrimack that ended up winning the conference tournament. And this will also be, as you pointed out, Sacred Heart's final chance to win the NEC and get their first NCAA tournament bid as a D1 team before they move up to the Metro Atlantic, where it's going to be a lot harder trying to crack through.
Yeah, and I think that Sacred Heart was, I think 7 of their top 8 players are back this year for that team last year, and I think especially with Fairleigh Dickinson, head coach Tobin Anderson going, their top 2 scorers are going. I kind of like Salika's pick here of Sacred Heart. Griggs, what about you?
I'm still going to go with Fairleigh Dickinson, but I like the pick.
Okay.
As a rooting interest, it's kind of neat to see a Sacred Heart team that really, even by Northeast standards, has never been at or near the top. Get this kind of preseason accolades. It's kind of exciting.
Well, they've never made an NCAA tournament, so.
Right. Last year, this entire conference, I don't think this has happened before. This is a Stalika type stat. Entire league, the whole one outside of the top 300 of the metrics of the net.
I think that's a pretty safe bet considering just how much the Division One has expanded in the past 20 years.
Yeah. Wow.
Where are we up to next? Who wants the next conference here? Rocco, you want to take the Ohio Valley, which has been, which I think we knew who was going to win the conference until about a week and a half ago when it became official that the best player of the conference will not be playing this year.
Yeah, brutal injury for Morehead State there, and Preston Spradlin's an amazing coach, so I still think they're in the mix to win it, even without their star.
That's Mark Freeman, by the way. Yeah.
Mark Freeman, yeah. My notes didn't populate constantly. But I will say this, like, the league's wide open. I think that goes without being said. There's a lot of cool little stories all over the league. So at this point, I'm kind of just going with my gut. I think you could go a lot of different directions here. But what Ryan Ritter's building at UT Martin, maybe not good enough to win the league outright, but I think they might have something special, and the timing might be right for them to go steal the bid. I love Brad Korn as a coach over at SEMO, who won the tournament last year and stole the bid. So I'm not counting them out. And I also think SIU Edwardsville currently has the most talent. Yeah. So I think I'll pick Edwardsville to win the regular season with Morehead close, but I'm picking UT Martin to steal the bid.
Yeah, I like I only looked at who's going to win the regular season. I love the Edwardsville pick to win this regular season now with Morehead's injury. Dorman, your thoughts?
I agree with you. I like SIU Edwardsville as well. Coach Baroni is phenomenal. I don't know if he'll get any time. It's a freshman coming in from the Chicagoland area. I got a chance to see him a few times in high school, and he's just fantastic. Jordan Pickett, if he gets out on the court, watch out. This kid is really, really talented. But I'm going with SIU Edwards.
Yeah, a little note on Edwardsville. They were real inconsistent last year, but there was a time where they were 16-5, and they looked to be the only team that was in position to not be to avoid a 16 seed if they were to win the auto bid. With more experience this year, I think that they can consistently play up to that level and not be so streaky. That's a lot of words to basically say I agree with you all on the Edwardsville pick.
I had two other quick thoughts on the
Yeah.
league, Chad, if
Go
that's
ahead.
okay. Yeah, so I would just also like to say Little Rock's incoming newcomers are pretty amazing. They got Mikal Mitchell from Arkansas coming in, Jameer Chaplin from South Florida, and Kalen Robinson from Texas A&M. I mean, they have the potential to blow through the ceiling if that hits right. So watch out for the Trojans. And then the other thing I'd mention, just after talking to a lot of coaches this offseason, Western Illinois' new coach, Chad Brodeur, probably not known by many people nationally. He was a dominant coach that runs a lot of different zone schemes on defense. Watch out for Western Illinois to make some noise later in the year.
Yeah.
He's a really, really great coach, and he's got a D1 job now.
Yeah, Western Illinois joining this conference very late.
Yes.
And pissing off Summit League people. We'll get to the Summit League in a little while when they jumped out.
Western Illinois picked 8th, and that's because the local
that.
media that covers the OVC just doesn't know them. They're better than that.
They don't even know they're in the conference yet. But Greg, so let me stick with you here and jump over to a conference here in the Patriot League where Colgate for several years now has been a dominant force. Out of, I believe, 23 games, including the conference tournament, they only lost one last year against Patriot League competition.
Right.
Do they have that again this year, or could somebody catch
Well,
it?
I mean, Colgate, as you said, the flagship team of this conference for the last several years, 17-1 in the regular season, blew through the conference tournament. But this is the year, Chad. This is the year that Colgate gets out there and does it again. No one can catch him. Yeah, it's Colgate in friends at this point.
I kind of agree with you, although Stalika, I think there might be a little bit more life in schools like Lehigh or American this year.
Lehigh was a team that was poised to challenge last year. They do have 4 starters coming back now, and I do say poised to challenge because they did get upset early in the Patriot League tournament, so that basically cleared the way for Colgate to end up winning the thing.
Colgate would have won it anyway.
Rocco, how about American? 5 of their top 6 players are back. They won 17 games last year.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just trying to find somebody.
Yeah, I think Lehigh is the clear number 2 for me, but I think it's like Colgate here, Lehigh here, and then everybody else.
Yeah, I mean,
Lehigh's got 2 all-league players. I think that's well deserved. I'm trying to find a good sleeper, maybe Navy. It's hard to know. I thought Dave Paulson would do pretty well at Holy Cross, but the roster still looks a little weak. But keep your eye on Holy Cross. Maybe just his coaching will make a difference.
Well, Dorman, let's just jump right over to the next conference here. That's the SoCon, which Furman was the team last year, and their hero from their first round upset is back. But what are your thoughts on this conference and these teams?
It'll come up later on the ballots, but I think Furman is deserving of my pick to win the conference. They bring back some experience from that team that had an incredible run in March. Bob Ritchie, the coach, I think did a phenomenal job, has done a phenomenal job there for years. Strong program. I don't really love a lot. I don't think there's about 4 or 5 teams I could cross right off of that can't really challenge. But then you get to a few contenders. Sanford, the Bulldogs will have a good team again, I believe. Western Carolina is strong, and they have a bunch of people back, so watch out for Western Carolina. My last one that might have a chance would be Greensboro. Greensboro's strong.
Good picks. I like the Sanford and Western Carolina picks to maybe not win it, but to do very well this year.
Yeah, and Bothwell and Slauson are both going from this Furman roster. That was about 35 or so points per game roster, Rocco, off of that roster. I want to like Western Carolina. I really want to pick them in this conference. Are you with me?
I'll be rooting for him as well. I like everybody in this league though, so it's
Mhm.
really hard to separate once they play each other. I'm actually going to go with. Well, I agree. Furman should have enough juice there to win the regular season, but I like the consistency, and obviously Bob Ritchie, besides last year, only won the SoCon tournament once. I like what I'm seeing out of Greensboro's roster. Just the experience, the commitment to defense. That's the kind of pedigree you're looking for in a conference tournament champion. So I've got Greensboro going to the tournament.
All
I
right.
was very disappointed in Chad. I was hoping we would get Green Eggs and Sam in the conference championship.
It could happen, but I just Western Carolina is this team that seems like every year they're not there, and I think this may be the year that they can really make a run at it. And I think Furman is vulnerable this year. I think there's a
Yes,
lot of offense they've got to replace from last year.
agreed. Agreed. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't win the regular season either, but on paper,
They,
they've got the most
they got a couple big
talent.
transfers coming in there too. Western Carolina, Lampton from Charleston, Robertson from Mercer coming in. So, uh,
And Woolbright's a bucket getter for sure.
And we haven't even mentioned Chattanooga, who also got into the championship game last year, I believe, but they could
uh,
not extend their misery against Furman.
yeah, but Chattanooga is I think in rebuild mode this
Yes.
year.
Yeah, they do have Dan Earl though. Like Dan Earl's a great coach, so expect them to steal some wins you don't expect. And then I would also say for the either the new head coaches, I'm really high on Brooks Savage. He's a Steve Forbes disciple. He was actually on the bench with him at East Tennessee State. Now he's the head coach, and he's already killing it in recruiting. They're very aggressive. I think East Tennessee State's going to be a ton of fun to watch.
Dorman, let's head over to the Southland Conference, and it won't be until after the first 10 games of the season or so. But I think the big story here is Will Wade in this conference over at McNeese State.
Will Wade is back in college basketball. Who would have thought? Correct. Is it a 10-game suspension, Chad?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it got reduced to 5? I had it. It was a 10 at
I
one
don't know.
point.
It could be 10. I don't know.
Okay.
It's fine.
I am not the biggest Will Wade, forget what other happened, on the court X and O's, but I think he might have the best team in this conference. There's some teams that'll be in the running here. I like New Orleans to have a really strong turnaround season. They struggled last year, but they were young. So look for New Orleans to bounce back. Southeastern Louisiana, I think, will be in the mix. But my pick, ironically, is Will Wade and the Cowboys from McNeese.
Yeah, I have it as a 10-game suspension unless it got reduced more recently. It was originally always going to be 5 when they hired him. Then the NCAA said no, it's going to be 10. But
Strong suspension.
a strong suspension. Griggs, is this McNeese team the team to win it, or can another team? I mean, Corpus Christi has everything going off. They were the champions last year, but maybe somebody else can step
Corpus Christi is bringing back the laundry. I mean, the clothes are the same.
up. Okay.
Other than that, it's entirely different. Sela was the preseason media favorite. I guess
That's
that
who I
makes
like.
sense.
That's who I like. So go ahead, make a case for it.
Yeah, and they were 12-6 last year despite a very thin bench. I think if they can add more depth, and I could understand because of what they bring back and what they might be adding, that probably puts them ahead of everybody else. Outside of that, with all due respect, this just isn't a league that strikes me as being strong at all. Outside of maybe one or two teams.
Yeah, Rocco, I find so much trouble finding a team. I want to look at somebody like New Orleans even. They got 4 starters back, but they led the nation in turnovers last year. That's not a good stat to lead the nation in.
Yeah, maybe they should have found some new players instead.
Exactly.
No, I think
Christian plays that up-tempo pace there. Maybe them. I don't know.
I'm on pins and needles about the waiver situation at McNeese. If like Mike Saunders gets denied, which he might very much get denied, I'm not sure that CJ Felder graduated from Florida. If he gets denied, and then Damian Richards from UTSA, I think he's a one-time transfer, so he should be okay.
Yeah.
And I know Shahada Wells already graduated, so he should be good to go. I mean, this McNeese roster for the Southland standards is freaking loaded. And if they get all these guys somehow, they're going to win every game by double digits, in my opinion. They'll have an easy chance to sweep the entire league. I think the talent. I thought the preseason poll was a joke. These guys should clearly be the favorites. However, if they lose like 3 or 4 of these guys due to waivers, then they kind of fall back into the mix. I still think they have supreme talent, though. And if they do end up getting all these guys again, like I would have for sure had them in my UTR top 10.
Okay. Stalika, Southwestern Athletic Conference. What we know here is that Texas Southern is going to finish in 7th or 8th place and win the conference tournament like they do every year. But who's going to win the regular season at least?
Well, I could go with either Grambling or Texas Southern right here. Grambling was the team that did end up challenging Texas Southern in the conference championship game before falling to the bottom to Texas Southern.
to whoever they fell to.
Yep.
Oh boy.
What about Jackson State in this league? Bringing in Deshaun Ruffin from Ole Miss, who was a double-digit scorer as a freshman a couple of years ago. I think he could be the key to this conference.
You stole my thunder. He's a really good player. He'll be one of the best players in this conference. I think Mo Williams is an up-and-coming coach. I think he's got a few pieces to work with. Besides Ruffin, they have Colty Young at the point guard who can do some things. Ken Evans on the wing can shoot. I'm with you, Chad. I like Jackson State to win this conference.
Me too. Speaking of polls that are a joke, how are they 4th? They're the best team in this league.
I think Rocco cases can be for a few other teams. Even Alcorn State was co-champs, and they have 2 of their top 3 players back. I mean, there's a lot that could happen here until Texas Southern wins the conference tournament.
Right, exactly. No, I like Alcorn again. I was high on them last year. I also think Grambling had a historic year. They have enough back to be dangerous. So I think it's a fun league. Jackson State, I agree, has the most talent. Mo Williams, of course, being the coach, he's a player's coach. He's going to get players, but he still hasn't proven it on the coaching level to get over the hump and get to that championship game and win it. This could be the year. I also think Pine Bluff is a nice dark horse. They keep getting better every year. They shoot the crap out of 3-point shots. They can knock you down on any night. They beat TCU last year, for example. There's so many good little stories brewing here. Bethune-Cookman just beat Florida Gulf Coast in a scrimmage, if you didn't hear that. So, I think there's like 7 or 8 really interesting stories.
You didn't even mention my dark horse is Alabama State with a great backcourt of Matlock and Range, but
Matlock's a player for sure.
Griggs over in the Summit League, which we thought was going to be a 10-team conference. Everyone thought it was going to be a 10-team conference. Very last minute, as we mentioned earlier, Western Illinois packs up, goes to the OVC. Actually, totally screwed up the Big Sky Summit League challenge series here because 2 Big Sky teams were left with only 1 opponent because of this. But only 9 teams, but I think there might be 5, 6, 7 of them that win this league this year. I think it's a fascinating Summit League.
Yeah, and it kind of created from what I understand, it created some frustrations with the scheduling because suddenly they had to go out and find 2 more games. There's 5 or 6. I like a lot of the teams in the top half, but I like South Dakota State more than the rest of them. 6 of their top 8 are back. I know that they lost 2 key pieces, but I just think that I like them more than the rest of the conference. I like the program in general, and I think if anybody's going to make a run at the bubble, it's them.
So, Dorman, what do you think? South Dakota State, and who else is up there with them?
I'll give you a team that I think is up there and up and coming. The Tommies from St. Thomas.
Yes.
I think they have a chance to get some wins this year. Coach Johnny Tarr's been there a long, long time, but he's got some guys there that have been a long time and know the program, know the situation, know what he likes to get done. Raheem Anthony comes back. Scored over 23 points a game last year. He can flat out score. in this league where scoring is a lot of scoring is usually put up. So you need scores, you need shooters in this league. They got another shooter, Parker Borgkeland, I believe. I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm sure. Another good shooter.
Yep.
Borkland, thank you. Another good shooter. I think this team will be in it and has a chance to win the regular season conference.
Rocco, are we forgetting about last year's champion and Oral Roberts? I know Max Adams is gone, but there's Isaac McBride's back, Kareem Thompson's back. There's still talent here at ORU, isn't there?
Yeah, they brought in your boy Jalen Miller from Rutgers too.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. Might be why you like ORU a little bit more. No, it's a great program. I mean, when you've gotten to the heights of Oral Roberts the last 5 years, and now Springman, who's been there for a long time as an assistant, takes over as the head coach. They're keeping that continuity. They're keeping the culture strong. To me, they're the clear number two. I think South Dakota State's just a little too loaded with Zeke Mayo and company back. They have to be the pick, really. But I think Oral Roberts with Thompson and McBride, they've been key players through this run. That's the right amount of glue there to keep them in the top of the summit. I would say beyond those two, North Dakota State once again will be well coached. They lost, of course, the superstar Grant Nelson went to Alabama, but there's still enough there, and he's such a proven coach. I could care less what they do in non-conference play. When some action starts, they're going to find ways to win. And then I like Dorman's dark horse of St. Thomas. I think even though they lost their superstar freshman to Virginia, obviously belongs in the Power Five after the year he had. They still have quite a bit coming back, and a very well-resourced program. I think a key for St. Thomas, for the Summit League, is to keep St. Thomas happy, because I think they're a candidate to get plucked by a bigger league.
I kind of want to throw another dark horse out here that nobody's picking. And I don't think they could challenge South Dakota State, but maybe it could be a team that makes a conference tournament run. The Yotes. It's a completely new roster, but they have some size this year, and they got Paul Bruns, who was the Summit League Freshman of the Year a couple of years ago at North Dakota, coming in here. Keep an eye on the Yotes. That's what I'll throw out there.
I have such a soft spot for the Yotes. I would love to see them be good. Yeah.
They do love to play the conference tournament down the street, so that's nice.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, South Dakota State is also in their home state for the conference tournament. So, Stalika, I know you love the Sun Belt, so let me throw it over to you.
Oh, I forgot about that.
This is a conference where Southern Miss was able to come out of nowhere and actually run away with the conference regular season title last year. Unfortunately, that didn't translate to postseason success, as they got upset in the first round, but they are going to have Austin Crowley returning, should be one of the preseason all-conference members. They're also going to have Andre Curbelo transferring in from St. John's, who got chased out after Pitino took over, and he also had some prior experience at Illinois as well. But there's also James Madison, who the pundits are picking to win the conference this year, another team that's also been improving ever since they escaped what was the Colonial, now the Coastal Athletic Association.
Yeah.
And wait, but Salika, you didn't want to also mention another team that I've seen picked up there. Your hot App State Mountaineers.
I don't want to jinx it.
Go ahead, Griggs.
Well, I was just going to say, my bold prediction is that in the first week of February, the top 8 or 9 teams will be separated by a game and a half.
That's not a bad prediction in this league. It's like Dorman. And I look at App State, James Madison, Southern Miss, last year's
always
Louisiana.
Yeah.
Dark horses like Georgia State or Troy even. I mean, what is it going to be, Southern Miss, or are we going to go somewhere else?
I'm going with the chalk here. I like James Madison. Terrence Edwards is back. He is really a strong player. I agree with Griggs. It'll be about a mess up there at the top. There'll be plenty of teams hanging around, but James Madison, the Dukes, are my pick.
Rocco, you with him on the Dukes?
No.
Good, because neither am I.
This to Griggs's point, this out of every league, all 32 of them, even throwing over the radar, is the toughest to predict. So I just want to throw the disclaimer out there. But I am trying to find the best combination of a team that can defend and coach. And I keep landing with Dustin Kearns at Appalachian State. And I think, with the veterans and the returning minutes back, it's a nice mix there, not being heavily talked about. So the expectations aren't through the roof. I just think at JMU, like the offense is explosive, but a lot of times they don't show up defensively. That's concerning for a conference tournament setting where it's a one bid league. And then I also think Old Dominion might have enough pieces, especially with the transfer coming in, to make a run at the regular season title. It's really, really tough to say. And then one thing on Southern Miss, I'm not sure if it was discussed yet, but Neftali Alvarez, one of the heart and soul players in the program, had a season-ending injury last week, had knee surgery. So that really hurt Southern Miss, even though they still have Crowley and Curbelo. With Arkansas State hiring Brian Hodgson, they could be like a serious firecracker. South Alabama was the hottest team in the conference last year. And then we haven't even talked about Scott Cross at Troy.
That's where I was going to go, Rocco, here for you, because you said you want a team with great coaching and defense. And, and Troy has great coaching, I think, in Scott Cross. They play great defense, and they got great two strong guards back in Eugene and Muhammad. So I like this Troy team.
They could be really good. It's just I don't know if they're deep enough. But if they can get through the season healthy, who knows?
We got one league left. It is the Western Athletic Conference, and Griggs, you're up.
Well, the Lopes. I mean, that's who I really like out of this league. This is always one of my favorite conferences. I think there's some other really good storylines. SFA, who has a kind of a rich history as a Southland team, I think will be really good this year. A team I really like that just seems to get better and better and better every year is Seattle U.
Yes.
But as far as who I like the most out of this league, it's the Lopes. And I don't know if they're bubble good, but they're certainly set up to win the conference and be very, very tough to beat in the round of 64.
And last year, two Beehive Conference teams in this league here: Utah Valley 28 wins, Southern Utah 24 wins.
And how about the progress?
I think a big step back though for this year for both those teams. But
I do too. But Southern Utah, while they are taking a step back, this was a Centenary Award team. And last year they won 24 games.
Yeah, everyone is going from both those teams, including both their head coaches are going. Mark Madsen going from Utah Valley, Todd Simon going from Southern Utah. He's over in Bowling Green now. Stalika, your thoughts on the WAC?
I think Seattle is another team that's potentially able to sneak up towards the top, as you had mentioned, although it's going to be tough to get past Grand Canyon here now that New Mexico State is completely gone out to Conference USA.
Yeah, but Rocco, how about the mention of Seattle though? Cameron Tyson, 18.6 points per game last year. The guy's a stud.
Yeah, he should be player of the year in the league. I think he can flat out stroke the rock. He's a Bothell, Washington guy, town next to where I grew up, and been watching him for a lot of years. It's great for Seattle U that they've got a player like him. They have a fairly good roster. I think they're top 3 in the league with Stephen F. Austin right there as well. A lot of guys back for Stephen F. Austin. But I agree with Griggs. Grand Canyon's just a notch above. The only mystery for me at the Lopes is like their front line needs some work. The guards are just crazy talented.
Yeah.
And the wings. But if they can solve their front line, they don't need a lot. They just need a rim protector and make sure a solid rebounder is there. They should be one of the best under the radar teams all year. And then the last team I'll call out that I think will make the biggest turnaround in this league is UT Arlington. They hired KT Turner from Kentucky's staff. They have some great transfers coming in. SEMO's best player, Philip Russell, is going to be starting for them. They bring back a couple of returnees, and Aaron Cash, Shamar Wilson, and others. And I'll just be honest, like he took the UT Arlington job to flip it really quick and move back up. So they're not messing around down there. They want to win right away, and I expect pretty big things from the Mavs.
Yeah, you just stole my dark horse team in the conference. In fact, I agree with you. I like this Mavs team as a team this year, but it's so tough to go beyond what Ray Harrison and Blackshear and everything that Grand Canyon has.
Yeah, we've mentioned Seattle. I know that you're a Washington guy, Rocco, not so much a Seattle U guy, but maybe because you live in that same neighborhood. What the hell is that giant inflatable in their arena? That's just like it's huge. What is that thing?
I don't know. I
It's
don't know. I still
mesmerized
haven't.
me for years. I don't know what
Yeah,
that thing is. Yeah,
it seems like they've played in like 4 different buildings in the last 10 years, so
yeah,
it is hard to keep up.
yeah,
But I'm glad that they're relevant, because it
yeah.
means
They are.
we'll be watching them a lot more.
Yeah.
There are 362 teams in Division One throughout all the conferences we've discussed today and all the previous podcasts we've done. We've now discussed 361 of them. There's one left. Dorman, they are in your backyard being a Chicago guy. Our lone independent, the mighty Chicago State Cougars, chasing their first winning record since 08-09. Can it happen? Is this the year?
I don't know if they're going to have a winning record. So my answer to the question is no, but 11-20 last year is no small feat. This team was rock bottom 3 years ago.
Bottom.
I mean, bottom, no talent, nothing going on, no one going to the games. To pull out 11 wins, and a few of those were against some bad to look, like not the worst in the world. Like I think they really have made progress the last couple of years. I give them a lot of credit. Gerald Gillian's the coach. He's starting to bring in some local talent from around the city that the big schools don't want. But I really mean that. Great progress has been made at Chicago State in the last 2 years.
I'm with you 100%.
And look at this. Wesley Cardette Jr., 16 points per game, 5 rebounds per game last year. Jashawn Corbett, 14 points per game, over 8 rebounds per game. These two guys are back to lead this team. I think if they get enough non-D1 and garbage games, I don't have their entire schedule in front of me. Rocco, I think they could toe that 500 mark.
Yeah, I mean, did you guys talk about the Bewley brothers coming from overtime elite to Chicago State? I mean, that's
no,
crazy.
not yet, but yeah,
That's
crazy. Oh my gosh!
Well,
I mean, their starting 5 is awesome. They have an awesome starting 5, talent-wise.
Well, here's the thing.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they won 0 games multiple years in a row. Like
I'm pulling their schedule up right now on the left here.
Okay.
By the way, go ahead, Griggs.
And they went to, like, they were, I think, 299, 298 at the end of the year of the net. That they're outperforming. They've jumped essentially 60 spots in about 24 months, and I think that trend is going to continue up this year. That we're going to see them jump another 30 or 40 spots. And when you look at the under the radar conferences in that footprint, particularly the Summit League, who is down to 9 teams, they are out. The idea that Chicago State would be a complete deadweight if you brought them in is no longer true. They're in the Chicago market. This program has value. And of the Summit, the Ohio Valley, who they are an affiliate member, if I'm not mistaken, in men's soccer and a couple of other sports, they're outperforming multiple teams in that and in the Horizon League as well. A D1 program in Chicago that is making those kinds of improvements has value. And one of those 3 conferences should give them an opportunity.
So you're saying they're recruiting better than DePaul locally?
I would say so.
I agree.
Now the problem with seeking that 500 record, only 10 home games all season, 3 of them non-D1 ones, although they will count for that, can get the 500 record. But look at that. After December 20th, they're not at home again, other than East-West University and Indiana Northwest and other type of garbage.
Yeah.
But
don't you dare forget St. X.
Yeah, St. X. Yeah. Let me go ahead and leave this up here, though. Now that we have completed the conferences, we are going to jump right on over to our HoopsHD Under the Radar preseason top 10. All of us submitted votes here, and we had, I think, between regular votes and honorable mention votes, almost 30 teams that were voted for. We had to trim the list a little bit here. But this is our first top 10 of the season. And I'm going to start by, let's figure this out how we do this here. It's been a while since we've done this here. Revealing our honorable mentions. Honorable mentions include UNC Wilmington, Bradley, UNC Asheville, Drexel, Eastern Kentucky, UNC Greensboro, a lot of North Carolina schools here, North Dakota State, Stephen F. Austin, Furman, and even Southern Miss getting a little honorable mention love in there.
Southern Miss, all right. Yeah.
From one of us that may not have known that about the injury.
Yeah.
Let's get to our real top 10 here, though. Starting in at number 10, UC Santa Barbara, the Gauchos out of the Big West.
All right. I voted for them. I'm 1 for 1.
At number 9, we have Akron. That was our
Voted
pick
for
out of the
them. All
MAC.
right. Yeah.
All right.
Good job, panel.
Number 8, South
Well,
Dakota
yeah.
State, that team we liked in the Summit League.
Yeah. I'm all for people that agree with me. I'm liking the Pulsel.
Number 7, College of Charleston, a team that
I
got a
don't think
lot
I
of
had
love
that.
out of their conference. And at number 6, Liberty, coming in new conference here, Conference USA. At number 5, we had the Lopes, who we just
that's
discussed
high.
here.
Probably warranted, but yeah, that's higher than I thought. I know Rocco's huge on them. So
Northern Iowa, out of Missouri Valley Conference, coming in at number 4 here.
good pick, assuming there's another one ahead of them.
Number 3 was
Like
Yale.
this Yale team. Good job. This is an informed panel, I must say.
At number 2, also from the Missouri Valley Conference, Drake.
Yes.
2 Missouri Valley Conference teams in the top 4 there. And the number 1 preseason HoopsHD under the radar top 10 team is Chicago State.
Yes. All right.
So something might have gone wrong there with the voting. Maybe 2
Yeah.
through UNC Wilmington with a real top 10. I don't know, but
Yeah. Okay. So UNC Wilmington was
nowhere
10.
to go but down for the Cougars.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Rocco.
Chad, I don't want to admit that you got me, but the whole time I'm like, who is number 1?
That's a good.
Rocco,
without-
I actually think there is somewhere to go because remember, if next year Oregon State and Washington State end up being independents, you're going to have to deal with the independents above the radar. So Chicago State's going to move up above the radar, you know?
They're going to step their game up for sure.
Yeah.
And with no unanimous number 1, you might as well put Chicago State there. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the easy way to break the tie.
Yeah. I think Drake did get the most love. And let me at this point go through each of you for any of the final thoughts about any of these under the radar leagues, and if you want something else to address the chances of at-large bids again especially from those top teams like Drake and Yale and Northern Iowa that we just looked at. Sleeka, let me start with you.
We kind of alluded to it earlier with Bryant, but we now have a potential father-son interim coach duo here. Phil Martelli Jr. is going to be filling in potentially permanently, while Jared Grasso is going to be on the sidelines, although we don't know how that scenario is going to play out. Keep in mind, his father, Phil Martelli Sr., is also the interim coach at Michigan, while Juwan Howard continues to recover from his heart procedure here.
Yeah, and that's Joe Grasso. That's Bryant we're talking about here. For those of you that have not followed, and again, go look for the YouTube video. That's all I got to say. Dorman.
Just make sure you book 30 minutes before you do that.
I watched all 30 minutes of it. Yes.
We discussed a lot of really good, talented programs and teams tonight on all these under the radar teams. Get a chance to watch them in the next month or two when they get some of the big power schools on neutral courts. These teams can play. They've played together for a while, a lot of the ones we like. And the power conference teams, sometimes they're not gelled, they're not ready. These teams, these are some good teams. They're going to sneak up and beat a lot of these power conferences in the next month or two. Make sure you're watching. Fantastic basketball.
I agree. It's so much fun. We love these conferences. Rocco.
Yeah, I guess just a couple other new head coaches coming into under the radar that I've got my close eye on. Corey Gibson only went to Northwestern State for 1 year, turned it around pretty quick. They were another team that gave TCU hell last year, and he's bringing his 3 best players to Austin Peay. So expect for a quick turnaround at Austin Peay. Nate James, of course, got kind of a raw deal there for the Gubs, only 2 years and fired, but they did it for this guy, Corey Gibson. So big expectations. Also at Austin Peay, you have a brand new arena this year. So check that out. Hopefully I can swing by there some point this season. And then the other coach I wanted to call out quickly is Matt Logie, Montana State. Speaking of local Washington guys, he's a high school legend at Mercer Island. His coaching career has treated him very well. He ended up becoming the head coach at Point Loma, a top 10 Division II school, took them to the Division II Final Four and landed the Montana State job. Really excited for him. They actually scheduled non-conference road games at Washington at Seattle U, so he can have a couple homecoming games. But his trajectory is up. A couple of years younger than me, or sorry, a couple of years older than me. So he's got a bright future, and excited about that for the future of Montana State.
Yeah, if you look about new arenas, Longwood, I believe, is the only other under the radar school with the new arena this year as well. Georgia Southern was supposed to have theirs open, but that's been pushed back till next season now. Griggs.
Okay. Can you unlock the screen share for me, Chad?
No.
Well, okay, never. Well, he never does anything I want to do. But anyway, before I get to it, I just wanted to make sure it was ready when I used it. I'd like to talk about Bellarmine in particular out of the Atlantic Sun. They are in their 4th year of transitioning. They had a rough year last year, as every school seems to in the 2nd and 3rd year of transitioning, because they're in that period to where they lose key players and have a hard time replacing them because they're on probation. 2 years ago, they won the conference tournament. We're not eligible for the NCAA tournament. This year, they've applied for a waiver to be eligible for the postseason. Bellarmine, if you're watching, I think you know this. Chances are you're not going to get it. The rule is basically unfair, I think. It's impractical. The stated reason, if I'm not mistaken, is that schools transitioning up need 4 years to become assimilated. That's not the real reason the rule's there. That's just the stated reason. I'm going to say what I think the real reason is, and that's that they want to control the flow of schools moving up to D1, and they essentially don't want to open the floodgates. But I don't know what they put in the waiver. It could have been really smart. It's very, very easy to argue that Bellarmine deserves to be in there because the rule isn't fair. But what's hard to do is to meet the standard of a waiver saying that there is a mitigating reason that the rule should not apply to them or why they're in violation of the rule. And unless they got caught in some sort of time warp while transitioning up and it took an extra year longer than it should have, I don't think that they're going to get it. But I'm going to try my best to make an argument for them.
I'll tell you, Griggs, here also, just what they're out there. St. Thomas is stuck in that 5-year transition. It might be interesting to see what happens when their waiver comes up on year number 5, that they should have to go 4. But go ahead.
Yeah, because they're coming up from 3 to 1, whereas Bellarmine went from 2 to 1. And Chad is a lawyer, and he can help you with this. Probably a much better spokesperson than the puppet who's out on work release. But here's my argument for it, is that Bellarmine is not only assimilated, they're exceptionally assimilated. Athletically, they've won a conference championship already. You don't get more assimilated than that. APR-wise, and this is what I think the standard should be, is that after 4 years, a school needs a 4-year 930 APR window in order to be eligible for the postseason. But if they fall below that, it doesn't necessarily take them 4 years to recover. You can do 2 years above 950. I think if a transitional program has an APR that is 975 or higher, check my math on that, Chad. Is that 45 higher than the standard? 975 is 45 more than 930.
Yes.
Okay, good. It just I want to make sure that I'm right. This is substantially higher than the standard, and they have it across the board for all their athletic programs. I think that constitutes being assimilated. Here is Bellarmine's APR, if I'm looking at it right, for all sports. And to be fair, I don't know what it was last year, but for 2022, 2023, it hasn't been turned in yet. But thousands. Men's lacrosse, you can't look at that because they've been Division I longer. We're only looking at this cohort window, and it is above 975. They're above 975 in virtually everything and at 1,000 in most things. I think that that's assimilated. Not only is it assimilated, it's exceptionally assimilated. And that's my argument. They've competed at a D1 level. They have not just met the expectations, they've exceeded it. They've done an exceptionally good job at it. And if anything, the NCAA, and they've done all of this despite being a transitional program in all sports when retention is hard. So to get those kinds of numbers under those types of circumstances is remarkable. And to do that well, I think they should be rewarded. And I say that knowing the NCAA will not reward them, but they should.
We'll see what happens with the waiver. It has not been ruled on yet. I'm going to throw it back to Rocco for 2 seconds about one last point you want to make before we call tonight here.
Oh yeah, just one other shout out, team to watch, if you will. over at High Point. I thought they made a tremendous hire. They hired Alan Huss over from Creighton. He's a longtime, well-respected assistant coach, finally getting the shot to run his own program. If you're not familiar with High Point University, it's a very well-resourced place. And the fact that they care about basketball now is danger for the rest of the Big South because they're going to run the Creighton system there. They've already brought in a bunch of newcomers. It's probably going to take them a little while to gel. But you look at all their three-point percentages, you start to think mini Creighton already out of High Point. And I think, even if he only stays a few years, he could get that thing rolling pretty quick. So just another good story brewing in the Big South.
Absolutely. We love these teams.
Beautiful facility.
We will be every week. I believe normally on Wednesday nights we'll be recording an Under the Radar podcast. Not next week, beginning of the second week of the season. So we're going to keep you up to date on all these teams. But for now, on behalf of David Griggs, David Dorman, Rocco Miller, and Jason Voorhees, who seems to be holding a lightsaber. I don't know what's going on. We lost John Sleek again, but I don't know what's going on here either. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Chad Sherwood, and we will be talking to you again. We'll be back later on this week with our preseason bracketology podcast.